Okay, good evening, everybody. And I would like to welcome you to the Executive Speaker Night Series brought to you by Regis University and the Energy Africa Conference in collaboration with our partners, IB Circle. Today we have Susan Morrice as our guest, and we're really privileged to have her. Susan, welcome. And my name is Luca Pawanga, and I'm looking forward to today's event. Susan, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Luca, firstly, thank you very much, you and the whole team at Regis there. Well, I was born in Belfast, Northern Ireland, and that's the funny accent. I went on to Trinity to do natural sciences, specializing in geology, Trinity in Dublin, and then actually was hired by an American company to go and be based in Colorado. And I was just, really graduating, but I was excited about this because I did some research on America and found that the backbone of America seemed to be entrepreneurism. And in Ireland, the word entrepreneur really hadn't been invented. Now, this is a good, 38 years ago. And so I decided to do a bit of research on that. And when I was to come to America, to become and learn about entrepreneurs as soon as possible. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. And that's sort of the basic background to how I ended up here in Denver, Luca.
That is very interesting. So what led you to form a company, Belize Natural Energy?
Well, I think that very first mindset, which goes back to, it's almost like the American dream, and it brought so many people from all over the world to the United States, looking for freedom, looking for an adventure, that pioneer spirit. And so I took on that mindset, although that word I don't think had been coined in those days. And 3 years after graduating in 1978, I set up, my first company was S. Morrice and Associates, which was a consulting company based here in Denver, but consulting all around the world. And that was a learning experience in itself. And for the listeners, and maybe especially for the students, to have that mindset and to be looking at how to follow your passion and really find out and tie into things that you love and you believe in. And so that S. Morrice and Associates started for about the first maybe 5 or 6 years. And then one of the clients couldn't pay me. And the choice really was to not be paid or to actually, and I was delighted to use an American expression here, to take a piece of the action. And so I suddenly became, from a consulting company, which is one level of risk, into a real energy company, which is a whole new deal, as they say. And so that's the background of Belize Natural Resources, was the first company in Belize that I formed with Mike Usher, my Belizean partner. And then more recently, and it was about 16 years ago, I formed Belize Natural Energy, which is the company that has become really globally known for its holistic model at the core of its success.
How has the Belize Natural Energy company affected the transformation of the economy in Belize?
Oh, actually, it's been huge. Wow. Well, you can imagine at one stage, what year was it? 2002, 3, 4. The economy, the financial situation of Belize was taking a nosedive. And we had formed Belize Natural Energy in 2003, but we were taking the steps to apply for a license, obtain a license to explore, etc., and to drill. And when we drilled, which was, we started in May 2005, and on June the 24th, 2005, we actually hit the first oil in Belize against all odds and totally turned the trajectory of the country, the entire country, around, because we hit at a time when oil was over $100, or it may not have been quite there. It was on the way up to that. And it really turned the economy around, both jobs, the infrastructure, the balance of payments. And that was the first and immediate, very positive step that Belize Natural Energy and the government of Belize really made together. Because remember, it's a PPP, a public-private partnership. Plus, and this is maybe even more important to the local Belizean people, and Mike and I had an idea and formed the B&E Trust before we hit oil, which was a trust, a royalty stream to go into a trust for the people of Belize for education and the environment. And that was critical for scholarships to high school, to universities. In fact, I think it may have led to some scholarships even coming up to Regis, just to bring it right home to this point. And the empowerment of the local community with a greater educational sense and availability of cash from the oil in the country was huge. And we have been the #1 revenue generator for over 12 years.
Wow.
I know.
That is really fascinating. Now, you do have a program called Dare to, called Dare to
Dream Big.
Dream. Yeah, Dare to Dream Big.
Yes.
What has been the impact of that program?
Well, that's actually an outflow from the B&E Trust.
Mhm.
And the B&E Trust, by the way, is set up for the directors to be 3 from Belize Natural Energy and 3 from the government. So it really is an important way to keep alignment going with a government and a company for the sake of the whole country. Now, as I said, we were doing things like scholarships and putting cement on the floor of a school, playgrounds, all of these things. But the trust was really to be able to bring the same empowerment that Mike and I had in following our dream. We dared to dream big. And that was, there were 50 dry holes all around Belize. And we were actually almost ridiculed by thinking that we could discover oil when, Shell, BP, Mobil, Texaco, etc. had failed. And we were told that we were, we hadn't a chance. But that daring to dream big paid off for not only Mike, Usher, myself, and the company, but for the whole country. But what we wanted to do was to empower more Belizean young people to dare, the way Mike had a Belizean, to dream their big. What's their passion? What would they love to do? And so we took in about 250 applications. We had to choose 50 from that. They went into a 6-month part-time program so that they could stay in school and or work. And then out of that, 20 of them had to make a pitch, like the Dragon's Den, a pitch to us. I was a judge, and 5 won. And those 5 have this only happened last month. So those 5 were televised. And in fact, the 20 were televised all over Belize And I've got to say, it brought an excitement and an ignition to a country that, like all of us, had been sort of in a, let's just call it a holding pattern of the pandemic. And the leaders were delighted, that I mean the political leaders were delighted, because there was a great enthusiasm for this program, Dare to Dream Big, and it highlighted many of the young people's great ideas and helped them along, both seed capital and training.
Well, that's fantastic. At least your contribution to the youth is very significant in that area.
Yep.
My next question is, what do you think are the most memorable moments or achievements in your life, so to speak?
Well, let me just say, in my professional life at the moment,
Yes.
Two come to mind. One was hitting the oil. I mean, it was just like a series of miracles. Even the Prime Minister, Syed Musa, at the time, and the Senate all came out to celebrate this discovery in the first well, named after my partner, Mike Usher, because he had sadly passed away. So it was like all my birthdays coming together, and for everybody, the whole country. The second one, interestingly enough, and it is really important today, was when we won the Get Energy Award, the global award. We were competing against 50 countries for not just a successful company or the amount of oil, but for the empowerment and uprising of an entire country that is sustainable. And this is what is particularly important about Belize Natural Energy now, is that sustainability of the people of a country moving forward together and uprising a whole country to be a beacon for other countries to look and ignite, especially coming out of this pandemic. And, you know, it really boils down to that energy that we all feel when we tie in with our passion. And that's the real unifying force in the energy business today, is that innovation and creativity within us.
Excellent. Now let's talk ESGs. Well, meeting the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals can seem daunting for individuals and companies to achieve. Now, my question to you is, what is BNE's approach to doing their part? And what vision do you have for the world in this seemingly challenging time?
It's a great question, and on the minds of so many people, you know, coming out of COP26 in Glasgow, for instance, the climate change, the questions about how do we come together and unite to make a better world. And of course, the United Nations have got the 17 facets, let's just say, of how they see it being broken down. It does remind me, and linking into the United Nations, the 70th birthday of the United Nations was in New York in 2015. And one of the memorable times, again, linked in with the UN, was when BNE, Belize, tied and made a major agreement in New York with the United Arab Emirates. And that was a huge connect globally with another successful country, actually, very successful, the United Arab Emirates, who were intrigued by our approach to the oil industry and our discovery in Belize when everybody thought it was impossible, and our empowerment of the people of Belize. And so I think that's a particularly meaningful result of us encompassing the 17 aspects: environmental, poverty, education, and there are many more, but they actually all weave together to make a successful unity. And that's what we did at the UN in 2015. So we're continuing to travel along that pathway. And luckily, and I think this is one of my favorite things, is to ignite other country leaders to feel that they too can do this as well. And it is an answer, this unity, not division. Yeah.
Excellent. Let's bring it now down to Denver. In Denver, you are a major investor in XJet.
Yes.
Tell me how XJet is doing and how you ended up doing XJet, which is very different from coming from the oil company and going to aviation. How did that happen?
Well, I suppose the common thread is jet fuel.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Although actually it happened more to do with energy, and it's something I would love all the listeners to hear, because I am a petroleum geologist. I am not an expert aviator. And when Josh Stewart came to me with his vision, his new model for XJet, which he built at Centennial here in Denver, it's about 10 minutes away from me here. Mm-hmm. I could feel his passion and energy, and his description of the terminal XJet and the 7-star service, and the way that he could see the membership growing, and the special care taken for people like, actually, Fred Hamilton was the very first member of XJet. Now, he is one of the most well-known oil men in Denver. Now, he has since actually passed away. But when somebody like that goes into an investment as well, you know there is a tendency for others to come. And so I would have invested in Josh Stewart's vision for a new private aviation company. And indeed, it won #1 in the Americas and #1 in the world for a private aviation company. Now, we have, just to bring you up to date, we have since sold the facility in Centennial, the XJet facility, to Modern Aviation, which is a very well-known private aviation company throughout the Americas. But thanks to Josh, actually, and his contacts with the UAE, which, remember, led to the signing of the trade agreement at the United Nations, he got the coveted place in the new Dubai airport for XJet's private aviation hub, to be the center, really, of that part of the world, including Europe, Africa, and Asia. So it's been a tremendous learning. And I think one of the key things to impart is, again, back to when you follow your passion and your vision is clear, that's when investors want to come on board. It's not just the idea, it's whether you can execute it and see it clearly.
Excellent. So how has the XJet been doing in terms of performance? I know it's done all these expansions, but how has it been doing overall in terms of finance? Well,
I would say two key things. Mm-hmm. The two main operations were, and I'm saying where because we sold both these, both the Denver area, that's mm-hmm. XJet here, and which were the architecture, etc. Everything is superb out there, and XJet, it's London, which is Stansted, and their XJet had the largest hangar in the whole of Europe, which is where most of the BBJs, the big jets, come in from the Middle East into London. And so that was an excellent start for a young company. Now, it's still going well, even though we've sold it, but both the London and the Denver, it's still going well because private aviation has actually done better than commercial aviation. Excuse me, because it's because it is private, because you can, maintain that, let's say, healthy distance in your private jet, etc. And it seems to be, just watching the figures, it seems to be an area that that will be climbing and is climbing as we come out of the pandemic and fly and access more and more. I've got a good story about when one of these BBJs flew into Belize.
Mhm.
And it came from the UAE. It was a most beautiful, big jet with a golden bottom. And it was a particular leader from the Emirates looking at the port facilities in Belize. And it landed, and the Belize aeroplane staff went with their little steps up towards this beautiful big aeroplane. Must be the most beautiful aeroplane ever seen in Belize. And I could see the pilots, because we were the welcoming committee, I could see the pilots going, no, no. But the people on the ground couldn't see it. And luckily enough, somebody saw it and told them to stop. And then out came of this beautiful door, came these gorgeous steps right down onto the tarmac. And out came, actually, I think there was maybe 5, 6, maybe 7 at most people. And what was particularly touching was that this gentleman, who is responsible for all the successful ports, Dubai Model Port, which is a port, an airport, and a train, all combined together for total efficiency, just like the Dubai setting. And he came out and he brought his son. And his son had been having trouble in school. And he was taking his son under his wing. And it was such a personal touch, because he actually was doing both his business and his family. And it allowed me to see a man that could basically cover everything.
Very interesting. Now, you mentioned family, but I'll come back to that later.
Okay.
What I would like to know is, what did you learn from BNE that led you to be so successful with the with XJet? I mean, given the two different industries.
I think the biggest thing is people. And I would say that is with any industry or anything at all. It is igniting, inspiring, encouraging people to be their best. And when you're interviewing someone, to try and really draw that out and see if that can be sustainable. We, for instance, created an open KPI, key performance indicator at BNE, where you could actually see if you were having the green light, which was you were going beyond, we call it that extraness. The orange light, which is, you're doing your job. And then the red light, you definitely need to come in and either change jobs or say goodbye. So that has been important. Our interaction, both our training programs, because remember, when we went into Belize, no one had ever discovered oil. There was no energy industry. So we had to start from scratch, training everybody from drillers to marketers to everything. And now we're known for the ESG, as you mentioned earlier, the environment, the social governance within our company that makes our company shine and stand out because of these, not just training programs, it's bigger than that. It's attitude to the communities and to the lifeblood of a country in its forests, its mountains, its sky, its natural resources. So it's the true natural resource, again, of a country is the people with an open-minded, creative way that links and is in oneness with the country as well. So people is the answer.
All right. Now let me get back to people then. And you don't have to answer this question. At one time, you and I shared a story about one of the trying moments in your personal life.
Trying moments. God, I wonder which one.
Well, you mean, I'm referring to your daughter here, but I don't know. You don't have to answer it.
Oh, my daughter Hannah.
Yeah, but you don't have to answer it.
I will if it's a learning, and I think maybe I will. So thank you. Hannah, and in fact, she spent the day with me here today. When she was only 18, she came to me and she said she was pregnant. And I could feel the torpedoes of my conservative past coming towards me, going, oh dear, what are the neighbors going to think? All these silly things like that. And I was, and this is a key for everybody. I was so present in that moment. I could feel her every breath, her every smile. And I grabbed her and said, Hannah, we can do this together. And Jace was born, whatever it was, 8 months later. And in fact, Jace and I have just got back from the Broadmoor, where she and I had a granny and granddaughter weekend of swimming and walking and playing down in Colorado Springs. And so that was probably a very difficult, but amazingly rewarding aspect of, maybe it wasn't even a challenge looking back on it, because we made the right decision, because we could be so present for each other. And in that presence is, I believe, the presence is life.
Excellent. Let's get back to projects. I know that's that's not a question you would have expected anybody to ask.
No, it wasn't.
Let's get to projects. What other projects are you engaged in that you would like to share with our audience?
Well, the one that's particularly fun right now is, of course, the Zambian diaspora. And I think that's, and I particularly thank you, Luca, for that recommendation and involvement with such a motivated group of ladies and gentlemen, originally from Zambia and here in the United States. And of course, I think maybe mainly in Atlanta, but to think that Zambia has voted in a president that I believe is being looked at as a shining beacon, a hope for Africa. And so to mobilize the Zambians all over the world and connect and link back with both the assets, whether they be tourism, copper tailings, development, etc., but to also connect with the natural resource of the people, is a wonderful project, which I like to think I can bring both my Irish diaspora connect and my Belize, BNE, and XJet connect to the table to work with you and your team in the Zambian development. So I'd say that's really one of my favorites right now.
Very good. Yeah, now we have students who are in the audience here, and you talked about your journey. Here is a little girl from Belfast. During the, and excuse me for using little girl, but here is a girl from Belfast and in the middle of a war, and ends up doing the things that you've so far done, and you are very well accomplished. Now, there is some girl out there or some student here who wants to do something like what you did and in fact outperform you. How should they prepare themselves?
Good, I love that point, outperform me. I think that's great. I'm finding more and more, I think your question is very topical. I'm finding more and more as I work with students and young people all over the world that they actually do want to make a difference. And it's not about what salary they'll get. It's about their fulfillment. It's almost an old-fashioned word. They want, and funny enough, Josh, when he came to me, he used that same word. I want to feel fulfilled. I want to find that passion and follow it. And so I would say, take those steps. Dig down into that true nature of yourself. You know, because your grandfather was a banker and your father was a banker, you don't have to be a banker. Now, there's nothing wrong with bankers, by the way, but sometimes that type of imprinting can happen and we don't even realize why we're doing something. So take the time. It's maybe one of the silver linings in the pandemic, that you can take the time to look into your true nature of yourself and say, what do I really want to be? What is my life's path? And once you're doing that, your visionary capacity and your appreciation of, whether it be a snowflake, as there were many today here, or the blueness of the sky on another day, or just the wonderment of the alignment and specialness of life that will captivate you. You want to be captivated, and from that, your life unfolds. And that vision for me, for instance, and Mike, of discovering the first oil in Belize, our vision was so clear. We could hear the people in Belize rejoicing before we'd even brought in the rig. That's the certainty when you are in alignment with that force within yourself. And so everybody listening has that, I would even call it a piece of God inside them, that life's force, and nurture it, bring it forward, follow it, listen. And it's amazing how your life can expand out to the very areas where you will excel and be full of joy and happiness and fun.
Excellent. Yes. Now, looking again on the topic of students, there are some students here who would like to be associated with either XJET or BME. Now, the question is, what should they do? How can they get in contact with you, or how can they work with you for them to be part of what you're doing?
You know, I could speak more clearly for BNE, just, you know, because that's my main job. Mm. And I would say, if it's the right person and they really want to do an internship, because that's what you should do to see whether you, how would I say it? To see whether working.
Test drive it, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. Test drive it. And also test drive it from the other point of view, whether the company and you work together.
Yes,
you know,
if you align, absolutely.
Exactly, because working with another culture creates and encourages a sensitivity that is very necessary. And actually, one of the best traits is listening, being able to really listen and learn from the local people. And we're 99% Belizean. So in fact, some people in Belize would joke and they say, well, Susan, you're the only white one in the company, but you're never white, you're always red, because I'm always full of energy. But yes, I would say most of the interns are Belizean. However, if there is a young person listening now and wants to, you know, connect with me through you, Luca, or whatever, please let them come forward, and you just never know until you ask.
Absolutely. Now, you're talking about internship. Is that paid or unpaid?
Well, I think they would have to have some amount, a stipend, to keep them going. If they were in Belize, for instance, we might be able to, we'd find a way. In fact, I've done a few of them, even from Denver, where we paid their lodgings and food, etc., not very much. They couldn't save on it, but they could certainly explore a whole country and explore themselves at the same time.
Yeah, and one of the things I get, or one of the complaints I get from interns is, well, I was not doing what I thought I was going to be doing. Instead, I was just left at the front desk, just answering calls, and I didn't get to learn some of what I aspired to learn.
I think that's a pity if that's the case. I would say it's more likely at BNE that they would be running around doing thousands of things, not just at the front desk.
That's very good. Well, now I will open it up for questions from the audience. Well, here is somebody. You mentioned a seminar on your website as being responsible for your success. You have said it is a PhD acclaimed. What does this mean? Who has this PhD? What is it in? And who issued it? Well, I think this question goes, you can answer the first part. You mentioned a seminar on your webpage as being responsible for your success. How did that come about? Perhaps that's the way we could put the question.
Gotcha.
And unfortunately, the person who's asking you didn't even mention their name. They just put themselves as inquisitive.
Okay, gotcha. I'm a geologist and studied let's say, the history evolution of the Earth. But what we did not learn about was the mechanism of the mind. And I find it was a missing piece of the puzzle. In fact, funnily enough, how it came to me, Luca, was I had an idea, and it was 25 years ago. And it's actually the International Pavilion, which has become well known all around the world. And it was an idea that I had basically to invite the energy world to Denver, the first AAPG conference. And I got the Distinguished Service Award for it. But then a professor asked me to come and teach how I did it. And I realized I didn't know how I had an idea and implemented it. And then it's been replicated all over the world. And so I thought, I'm going to find out. And I researched for about 4 years, all sorts of different understandings, right back to Socrates, actually, to know thyself. What is our mind? What makes, what makes a George Price, who was the Gandhi of Belize? What makes him be so clear and focused that he brings peaceful independence to British Honduras, which is now Belize? What is that mindset? And so the study of the mind actually was what I would say was the missing piece of the puzzle that slotted together like a beautiful machine, which allowed that vision, especially for Mike Usher and I, to be so clear in Belize and for others that it was a happening. I think that's the best answer.
Absolutely. Here is another question. What is the nature of the oil rights and profit for the country of Belize in the BNE operations? He goes on to qualify, and this is coming from Brian Donahue. I ask this because I've worked in Guyana and have seen how a poorly negotiated oil contract with third parties can damage a nation.
It's very interesting about the Guyana connect there, and I'll speak about that as well. In essence, it boils down to 5 areas of take for the government, and one is royalty, one is net operating profits, one is working interest, one is taxation, and then one is a special tax as the price of oil goes up. It equals about 55% of every barrel goes directly to the government. And then there's another 1% that goes into the BNE trust. And so out of that, maybe 40% we do the drilling, the paying of the salaries, the electricity, etc., etc. That's the general take. Now, in a way, it's been lucky we didn't discover too much oil, because we've had to be innovative and creative about what we've done with our oil. At first, yes, it was so exciting. It was, you know, 100 barrels, $100 a barrel, etc. But now what we're doing is we're bringing it and keeping it in country. It's creating electricity, it's creating cooking gas, and we're in the middle of a research project, which is geared towards bringing the creativity and innovation from the Belize people to do, for instance, spa products and a cosmetic line from the paraffins in the oil. And that's what I would say. Sometimes when you get so much oil, like in Nigeria, it can even be referred to as an oil curse. What you want is enough connection between the people and, let's just say, the gift, to inspire and ignite those people into new industries, instead of exporting it all, but to really buoy up a nation so that they are empowered and are sustainable. And that is genuine ESG.
Wonderful. So what you are mentioning really is what we call in economics the curse of having too much natural resources, so to speak. Now,
Exactly.
how do you develop the absorption capacity to do that? Because you've just mentioned that you are lucky you didn't discover a lot of oil. Now, assuming you were the Nigerian, you are in Nigerian boots, how do you go about developing that absorption capacity so that you can best utilize the resources that you have? Because this is a common phenomenon, particularly if you look at developing countries, Zambia in particular, with copper, Ghana with cocoa, Nigeria with, with oil, and we can go on and on and on. Even though there are a few countries that we can really draw upon, like Botswana, who have done a great job in making sure that they use their diamonds as well as they can. But I think the main problem is developing that capacity. How do you go about developing it?
Education. It's critical, and it can't be the old-fashioned way of get the product, whether it be copper or oil or whatever, and get out again. It's got to be a really solid PPP, public-private partnership togetherness, actually in the one vision for the country. And so sometimes when you get so much of one product, whether it be copper or oil or whatever, it leads to, it's almost like being spoiled. You know, like a parent spoiling a child with too much money, so they never get to really say, what can I do? And ignite that spirit, that what I would call it, the can-do spirit within. Now, we've been approached by a couple of people from Guyana about the BNE model, so that we could share it with them, because they have, of course, hit huge offshore reserves there. But can it ignite and empower and sustain the local people? So that's an important goal. Also, I was giving a talk at the OTC, Offshore Technology Conference, about 4 years ago in Houston. And these 3 petroleum engineers, lady petroleum engineers, came up to me, and they were from Nigeria. And they practically lifted me up and said, we want you to come to Nigeria. Because I'd been telling the whole room, there were about 300 people, actually, mainly women, about the whole BNE model. And I didn't have much time. And I said to them, I said, you go back, listen to what I've said, follow your passion and go for it. And in the last 3 years, these women leaders in Nigeria, for instance, have just celebrated by getting 3 key women in the National Oil Company. They are go-getters. They've been ignited to make the difference, even in Nigeria, which is probably the biggest oil-cursed nation, I'm afraid to say. But they are making changes and waves that are phenomenal.
Well, I have a question here from Laura Infante. She says she doesn't know, I mean, English is not her first language.
Okay.
And what would she do, or what would you recommend that she does to adapt and succeed in a different culture and language?
Oh, enjoy the adventure. Learn, be curious, listen, and if it ties in with your sort of your heartbeat, well, then, you know, then things will work. I think it's sort of about alignment. When we're in alignment with ourselves and not divided with doubts. You know, for instance, why should a wee Belfast girl find the first oil in Belize? I mean, that's a big doubt. So I had to actually change my way of thinking to say, why should we not? Why should Mike and I not discover this first oil? So it's about changing and understanding that mindset, back to that, and our mind, so that we are in alignment with life's force. And that's what I would say to her. She's got challenges ahead. In Belize, they're bilingual, so they speak English and Spanish. And so I haven't been challenged with a totally new language. Yes, it's a very different culture. And I'm fascinated by it, all the way down to the Mayans and the history of the Mayans. So if you're not enjoying it, you take a couple of steps, we'll come back and say, is this it? But if you feel that flow, let's say, well, then you're on the right path.
Okay, here is our good friend, Victor Ngoma.
Oh, hi, Victor.
Based on your experience in Belize, how would you advise Zambians / Africans in the diaspora prepare themselves to help out in Africa if given an opportunity?
Well, firstly, I would say don't wait to be given an opportunity. Get there. The moment. Get back there and find what clicks with you. Is it tourism? Is it tailings? Is it building roads? What is it? You know, for instance, I've just used Belize as an example. I am so excited that Forbes interviewed me about having a cosmetic line with the Mayans in Belize using the paraffin. And I'm supposed to be a geologist, but yet this is all about lipstick. So we are so equipped, our capacity is huge. And when you tie into that connect, whether it be, you know, in what you might say is your normal engineering, or something that is so different, like a group of tree houses, that is the new style of hotel in Zambia, you know, something that you never thought you'd be attracted by, and yet it might just come up and go, whoa, that's so cool. I just think we need to listen to that voice within, whether we're engineers, petroleum geologists, or whatever, because we're all human. And I think the more we can get together and share this, you know, like the conference in Atlanta for the diaspora from Zambia, and share that energy to go back. And I think we're having a conference in Zambia in June, and that's going to be enable us to see what is needed, what could be done, what sort of partners are around. I know I just went to Belize, and I gotta say, I fell in love with the whole country and all the people. And that love has sustained me through bumpy bits and throughout the last, well, I've been in Belize for 38 years. I'm not sure if that really answered your question, Victor, but there you go.
But at least you tried. That's good. You have mentioned, this is a question from Eve Ruya. You've mentioned BNE being proficient in ESG and Sustainable Development Goals. I'm curious, what specific responsibility BNE is taking in the climate crisis, given that it is a budding oil company in a world that is in critical need of transitioning away from oil or fossil fuel to protect future generations?
A very topical question. BNE was born on actually the energy that we are all exchanging here this evening, which is that creative energy within the natural resource of any country, and that is the open curiosity and innovation within the people. And you'll even, in fact, I was watching Sir David Attenborough, his passion for the animals, and his passion connected me through the Zoom today in such a fierce way that I could tell that together it's palpable. Now, to specifically address BNE, the model at the core of BNE is about that energy, that renewable energy. Now, it involves solar, wind, oil and gas, and then even products to engage the social piece, like Maya Mountain Magic being a cosmetic line from Belize. But it's deeper than that. It's deeper than that because the alignment with ourselves and with the landscape, the ocean, the sea, is a critical feature in that sensitivity to what we're calling climate change, but which is much, much more than that. Now, I would say Wall Street is, calling on ESG and saying we're not going to recommend an investment unless there's an ESG, let's say, box ticking. It's so much deeper than that. It's got to be authentic and holistic. And I think it's particularly, let's say, topical that it's Regis here tonight, because they bring that authenticity of the spirit into education. And so it's even more than an authentic ESG. It's an authentic self moving forward to make a difference in this world, in our communities, in our countries, and in the world. And when we do that, we come together and I know it sounds corny, but it's love, and it's love of each other, the planet. And that is actually what I know discovered the oil, but because the oil is a gift from God too. So once we start appreciating what we've got, what's around us, then that alignment with what I would call, well, maybe it's almost magical. Everybody has a different word for it, but I think probably we know what we mean there.
Well, I have some of my students here, and they've been asking quite a number of questions, but I would like to end it with one of my students asking. He said he would rather ask in person rather than in voice, rather than writing it down. Okay. I guess he wasn't pleased with the way I was reading the other questions. So Matthew Hackwell, go ahead and ask the question.
I'd like to see him. Oh, I see you, Matthew. You've got to unmute yourself.
There we go. Thank you. He had it turned off, so I couldn't unmute. What do you think the corporate culture at BNE, like, how do you guys think that gives you a competitive advantage in your guys' industry?
It's huge. It's absolutely critical, and brilliant question, by the way. It's the corporate culture. Firstly, is how the company was founded, and in essence, it was Mike and I and other directors, and then some investors from Ireland, because no other oil company would help us. And so that corporate culture is not only helped by training, but it's helped by Oh, for instance, I'll just give you an example. One of the people from the port at B&E said that there's a special marathon in the Chiquibul, which is way up in the Maya Mountains. In fact, you can see them on the map at the back there. That's the brown thing on the map. And there's a marathon running through there. And he said, wouldn't it be great to get our best runners from B&E and run together to solidify that camaraderie? Now, I know you've all, heard of things like that, but B&E every year, all the time actually, but this is a special day, the 24th of June, 2004 is when Mike Usher, my partner, passed away. On the exact day, 1 year later, the 24th of June, 2005, in the first well named after him, we hit the first oil. And every year on the 24th of June, we have a happy day. And that's part of our camaraderie and our culture of togetherness. Now, that also spreads out to families. And it goes through our gym. We've got a gym at the core of the company and a gym in the capital city, but it's a specialized gym that really understands the mind, body, spirit connect, and it's connected to the B&E Trust. So the corporate culture, which is your critical question, has not just solidified B&E going forward, but actually spreads out around the whole country. Did that help?
Yes, thank you. That was a beautiful answer.
Thank you, Matthew.
All right, I have a question. Oh, sorry. Does anybody else have a question?
I was actually going to say, it reminded me, and I know this is a bit of a big thing to do, but I would welcome any of you to come down and see us in action in Belize. It's a beautiful country. It's the diamond of the Caribbean. So there you go, Matthew.
Excellent. Well, let me ask a managerial question. Being the owner and also the CEO, how do you handle some of the problems that may crop up due to factions within the company, where these people are they form a group and they want to be the it, and these are they also form another group and they want to be it, and they begin feeding you information about different people.
Mm-hmm.
How do you handle that?
I'd say part of our understanding, and back to Matthew's question about the corporate culture, is that if you let your ego get away with you, it's going to lead to, and you'll see it in the KPIs. You'll play the blame game or whatever whatever you're thinking about. And so it's quite important to, firstly, back to one of my points, pick the right people, encourage and train and nurture that spirit of oneness, of unity. I think somebody used that word, which is critical both to the whole company and to us within the country. So yes, the odd disagreements occur. And in fact, funnily enough, I was handling one today. But it is amazing how it gets worked out. Yep.
Well, with that good note, we will call it a day. And thank you very much for having taken your time to visit with us for this 1 hour. I promised I was going to get you out by 7. And I even got you some 60 seconds to play with.
I would like to thank you, Luca, very, very much for this invitation. And I would like to encourage everyone to go for it. Be that being you were born to be. Get in there and find that path. And the rewards are beyond measure. And you can make a difference in the world. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, join me in thanking Susan once again.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.